In Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21, those are three chapters that carry references to the same occurrence. Jesus prophesied to his disciples that the amazing architectural beauty of Herod's temple, then standing in Jerusalem, would actually be destroyed stone by stone. That's something that caught the disciples' attention. And then they responded to him, well, then when will this be? And they said, what shall be the sign of your coming, your second coming? Because his first coming obviously was already there. So we're talking about his second coming. And then they said, and the end of the world as we know it, this age, effectively, the end of this age. Well, Jesus then responded by identifying the first great indicator, deception. He said right off, don't let anyone deceive you. He then identified some indicators of the end days, including people masquerading as truth, even as Christ himself. He said, you'll hear of wars and rumors of wars, but he said, don't be troubled. And that's what our guest Michael Snyder said in the last segment. Christ didn't give these things to us to alarm us, but just to the contrary. Don't be troubled. But then he said the end is not yet. He said that nations would rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. He said there'd be famines, plagues, earthquakes in various places. And he said these would mark the time of the beginning of sorrow. So there's a progression that he's talking through this process. In reality, the prophecy had a near-term and a long-term application. The temple was destroyed in 70 A.D. But the second coming obviously has not yet happened. It's yet to occur, with these events and others occurring in frequency and intensity. So, Michael, let me start here with you. You recently wrote an article based off of this section. You entitled it, 9 Signs Unfolding Right in Front of Our Eyes. Now, you picked out 9. I think we could probably find more than 9, and you weren't being totally inclusive, and that wasn't your goal. But you picked out 9 that we're going to look at some of them here right now. How about if you could right now highlight all 9 just in quick fashion, go down through and highlight all that you picked out. Then I'd like you to go to the first one that you highlighted and why it's so significant and so undeniable, so to speak, as we are seeing this sign unfold right in front of our eyes.
Yeah, Pastor Sam, and this first one is going to actually require a little bit of explanation, because when we're talking about wars and rumors of wars, well, over in Israel just had a third election. Most people know that. And it was, once again, inconclusive. So they had to come to an agreement between Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the blue and white chairman Benny Gantz. And as part of that agreement said that Netanyahu, who's taking the first turn as prime minister according to the agreement, that he can begin the process of annexing portions of Judea and Samaria. Right now, most of the world considers that to be Palestinian territory, but he can begin that process as early as July 1st. In fact, Netanyahu just came out publicly and said, according to that agreement, he plans to move forward on July 1st and begin annexing portions of Judea and Samaria. And the reason why Netanyahu is in such a rush is because he wants to get this done before the U.S. election in November, because Donald Trump, the Trump administration, is prepared to support this annexation process. But if Joe Biden wins in November, Biden has said he's completely against it. He doesn't want any part of it. And so Benjamin Netanyahu sees a window of opportunity for just a few months to get this done, to make sure it gets done, because he doesn't know if Trump is going to win again in November or not. So Israel looks like they are going to move forward with this process. Of course, on the other side, you've got the Palestinians and their allies, which are saying, no way. They're saying this will mean war. You've got Hamas in the south, which has been constantly launching rockets in Israel. They're already super upset, and this is about to push them over the edge. You've got Hezbollah in the north with over 150,000 missiles currently pointed at Israel, and war was ready to erupt in the north there, even before there was any talk of annexation. Then you've got the Palestinian Authority, of course, in the West Bank, and Mahmoud Abbas is saying, hey, he's already pulled out of all previous previous agreements with the United States and Israel, and he said, I'm just about ready to completely dissolve the Palestinian Authority if this takes place. And then you've got the king of Jordan, King Abdullah, saying this could mean war. Others, Arab leaders in the region, saying this could mean war. And Pastor Sam, this really could mean war. And of course, many of us that study Bible prophecy have been anticipating a major war in the Middle East, and it looks like it could happen because this is crossing a red line for the Palestinians, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is absolutely determined to move forward with this.
All right. And of course, in your article, Michael, you go on and list some other indications or some signs, I guess we should say. That's, of course, the term that we're using. Of course, I think it's important for our listeners to understand that Matthew 24 and 25 is yet to come and will come after the rapture. But when we start seeing things like that's listed there taking place today, that's a pretty good indication to us that we're getting very, very close to the rapture. But, you talk about wars, you talk about earthquakes. In fact, that is the second sign that you indicate in your article. Why are the wars that we are seeing taking place today or could take place soon, as well as the earthquakes and famines and turmoil and other things that are taking place in the world today, why is that so significant as it relates to the second coming of Jesus Christ, maybe even more significant than previous wars and earthquakes and so forth over the last century?
Yeah, Jesus gave us a scenario to watch for, and so we should expect all these things to happen at the same time. And, at a time, people say, well, there's been these things happen at various times all throughout human history. But really, the end time scenario that the Bible paints couldn't happen until Israel became a nation. That happened in 1948, until Israel took control of Jerusalem, 1967. So only since that time are we in that kind of end time scenario. And now we're starting to see these signs erupt all at the same time. The birth pains increasing and increasingly and frequency and intensity. And you talked about earthquakes. Jesus said there'd be earthquakes in diverse places, and we're seeing large earthquakes, 4, 5, 6 magnitude, erupt very, very frequently all around the globe. And in particular, we're watching the Ring of Fire, where the vast majority of the world's earthquakes and volcanic activity happens on kind of a ring that roughly encircles the Pacific Ocean. Of course, the west coast of the United States is along that Ring of Fire, and we have seen, for example, we just saw a magnitude 4.7 earthquake just not too long ago strike off the California coast. But there have been all kinds of course, there's all kinds of smaller earthquakes. In fact, in just the last 7 days, I just looked this up on the Caltech earthquake map. In California and Nevada, in just the last 7 days, there have been 2,862 earthquakes just in those two states in just the last 7 days, a much higher level than normal, because I watch this thing on a regular basis. So we're very, very concerned. We're very, very watching this closely. And then with volcanoes, I just looked up the latest number from Volcano Discovery, 25 volcanoes around the globe erupting right now, and that includes Mount Popocatépetl down in Mexico, which is, just south of the United States. And many Americans don't realize that's actually one of the most dangerous volcanoes on the entire globe, because it's not too far from Mexico City. There's about more than 20 million people that live in the region, and Mount Popocatépetl, scientists tell us, one day will explode with a catastrophic eruption. And they tell us in the ancient past, it's actually sent tsunamis of hot mud in the times of the Aztecs. Tsunamis of hot mud completely buried entire Aztec cities with superheated mud, killing just tremendous amounts of people. And there's the potential that someday there's going to be another catastrophic eruption of that volcano, and it'll happen again. So we're watching these things, and we're concerned because we don't want to see natural disasters, but they're also indications. They're the signs that Jesus warned about to watch for in these last days.
Michael, we're just about done. Gary and I are going back and forth with each other here offline as we're talking, because he's out in western Pennsylvania and I'm in the eastern part of the state. Apply this as well. We're talking about signs here. Now, ultimately, these are things that are really pointing toward the Jews who are going to be there when Christ comes back to Jerusalem and sets up his kingdom. But we as Christians, as looking at this is for our application as well. Is it not?
Oh, it most definitely is, because as believers, Jesus wanted us to watch. He said, watch, because otherwise our focus gets on other things. And then when our focus is on other things, we're focused on so many believers today are focused on their careers, are building up wealth, on their plans, on their programs, on the things they have planned for their lives. But Jesus wanted, and then all of a sudden these things come along and they're disrupting people's plans, and people are looking around and saying, my plans are being disrupted, I'm fearful, I don't understand what's going on, because they're not watching. But we were instructed to watch so we would not be afraid, so we'd understand what we're going on, so that we could plan our lives, get our lives in plan with God's plans in these last days.